A boy arrived late to class, and the teacher didn't hesitate to make him the subject of mockery because of his skin color. What Professor Martinez didn't know was that the same boy, Samuel, was about to prove that intelligence has no color and that prejudices only confine those who hold them. A crowded classroom full of murmurs. The students, all in uniform, settle at their desks, while Professor Martinez, a middle-aged man with a strict gaze, organizes papers on his desk. The door creaks open, and a boy with dark skin enters the room timidly. His name is Samuel. Professor Martinez looks at him with disdain, as if he's expecting something to go wrong. Samuel, with his worn-out backpack, walks to his seat in the last row, avoiding the gazes of the other students. He's only 12, but his face shows a maturity that doesn't match his age. The murmurs among the classmates stop for a moment, but the teacher, with a cold expression, doesn't waste any time making his first derogatory remark. "Samuel, right?" The teacher says, not lifting his gaze from his desk while sorting the papers. "Why are you late? Did your bus have trouble with the traffic in the poor neighborhoods?" The silence in the classroom becomes palpable. Samuel feels the weight of everyone's gaze. Although he is a quiet and calm boy, the humiliation he feels is like a constant pressure in his chest. He doesn't answer, just sits quickly, trying to hide his discomfort. The teacher, unaware of the harm he's causing, continues. "We're not here to play, Samuel. You should try harder, although, well, I can't expect much from someone with your profile." The students in the class release small chuckles, and some look at each other, confirming what the teacher just said. Samuel feels his whole body tense up. He knows what's going on. In his school, prejudices about his race are everyday occurrences, but it had never been so explicit. How low is the esteem in which they hold him just because of who he is? In the distance, the school principal, Mr. Ruiz, passes by the hallway, unaware of what's happening inside the classroom. Samuel can't help but look out the window while the teacher continues with the class, but something in his mind awakens. For years, he's dealt with the same treatment. But today, something is different. Something that, although it's in his hands, he can't express. In the middle of the class, Professor Martinez asks a question to the students. "Can anyone tell me the answer to this algebra equation?" "Maybe, Samuel, you can surprise us." Samuel, feeling the weight of everyone's gaze, timidly raises his hand. The murmurs intensify, and some of his classmates start whispering among themselves. The teacher watches him with a slight, mocking smile. "Samuel, are you sure you know the answer? Go ahead, give it a try. Maybe you've learned something in that neighborhood where you come from." Samuel, although hurt by the comment, doesn't hesitate. He stands up with a calmness that isn't typical of him, but which reflects his true ability. With a firm hand, he grabs the chalk and starts writing the equation on the board. The room falls into absolute silence. Samuel solves the equation in a matter of seconds, writing step by step, without hesitation. All eyes are fixed on him, surprised. The teacher, who was expecting a mistake, is left dumbfounded. The class, once filled with laughter and comments, becomes an uncomfortable silence. That's not possible," says Professor Martinez, unable to hide his astonishment. "How did you do it?" Samuel, with a calmness that contrasts with the tension in the room, turns toward the teacher. "They taught me to think, Professor, although not everything that's learned is in books or on the streets." The teacher, still not understanding what's happening, takes a step back. The students, who initially didn't believe in Samuel's abilities, start looking at him with new eyes. Some, who had once laughed at him, now feel ashamed of their own prejudices. In the following days, Professor Martinez tries again and again to challenge Samuel. He always picks the hardest questions, the ones no one expects a boy like him to answer. And always, without exception, Samuel solves them with an ease that leaves everyone speechless. One afternoon, during a math class, the teacher calls him to the front to solve a much more complex equation, one that would challenge even older students. Samuel, with his usual calmness, heads to the board. The rest of the class watches in silence, wondering if this time the boy will fail. Samuel, without hesitation, grabs the chalk and begins to write fluidly, solving the equations so quickly and precisely that the room is left in shock. When he finishes, he steps back, turns to the class, and says, "It's not just about solving equations, Professor. It's about seeing the world differently." Professor Martinez is left speechless, unable to believe what he's just witnessed. The class, which had once been a field of judgment and humiliation for Samuel, now becomes a space of respect, even though no one has said a word about it. A couple of days later, the school principal, Mr. Ruiz, walks by the classroom. He stops upon seeing Samuel in front of the board, and a look of recognition crosses his face. He knows what has been happening at the school, but he has never dared to intervene. However, seeing Samuel's ability, he begins to question everything he has allowed. In a subsequent meeting, the principal asks Professor Martinez to stay after class. "I want to talk to you about Samuel," he says. "That boy is much more than he seems. And if we can't see that, then we're failing as educators." Professor Martinez, somewhat uncomfortable, nods, but inside he's struggling with his own prejudices. Over the next few days, he begins to observe Samuel with new eyes. Though the internal struggle isn't easy, the respect he starts to feel for the boy becomes more evident. Finally, the day comes when Professor Martinez decides to speak to Samuel. After class, he calls him to his desk. "Samuel," he says, his voice now softer, "I want to apologize for the comments I made earlier. I was wrong about you." Samuel, showing no signs of arrogance, looks at him and nods. "What matters isn't what you thought of me, Professor. What matters is what we learn together." That simple phrase changes something in the professor. He realizes that true education isn't about judging others by their origin, color, or appearance, but about seeing the potential in each person, regardless of their past. In the following days, Professor Martinez's attitude changes completely. He no longer makes derogatory comments, and he begins to treat Samuel with the respect he always deserved. The students, who initially looked at him with disdain, begin to see him differently. Some even approach him for help, surprised by his skill and patience. The change isn't immediate, but over time, Samuel becomes a source of inspiration for his classmates. His mathematical skills, which were once a subject of mockery, are now admired. The teachers, including Mr. Ruiz and Professor Martinez, begin working on an inclusion program, making sure that prejudices have no place in their school. One morning, at a school event, Principal Ruiz steps onto the stage and mentions Samuel as an example of overcoming challenges. The boy, who had been treated as inferior, is now applauded for his intelligence and dedication. The applause echoes through the room, and Samuel, with his characteristic humility, accepts the recognition without letting arrogance take over. Professor Martinez, from his seat, watches him with an expression of regret and admiration. He knows that the true learning has begun, and not just for Samuel, but for everyone involved in his story. In the end, Samuel remains a modest boy who continues to learn and share his knowledge. But now, he is recognized for his value, his talent, and his ability to break down barriers, not only in school, but in the society around him. And meanwhile, Professor Martinez, seeing his students shine, finally understands that the true prodigy isn't in the equations, but in the ability to change the way we see others. If you like this video, you have to watch this one, where a man is expelled for being black, but his revenge was something no one expected. Click now and see you there. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and drop a comment.